I personally think we sorely need, again, more in person. This kind of where we're in boxes has got many benefits to us. We're able to talk, look at you and I. We're having a conversation today we probably would have never met. But I was in a marriage that ended, and it was very, very difficult. It was a very hard thing to go through. However, I see today that what I learned from that is,
when I'm not hosting Unlocked, I'm speaking at events all over the world. I'm helping leaders and I'm helping teams communicate better. I'm helping them build trust faster and actually enjoy working together. I've spoken for companies like the Home Depot. I've spoken at national architectural firms. I've spoken for pharmaceutical company offsites. I've spoken at associations, you name it. With 99% of attendees of all those events, over 1,800 people have reviewed me at this point, 99% of them saying they got some value. That's pretty awesome. Even the caterers have thanked me. And if they are thanking me and they've heard a lot of talks and they're busy doing their jobs, that's saying something. If you're an event planner looking for a speaker who's really easy to work with, trust me, I want to be the last thing you're worried about on event day. I'm going to take care of you, and who actually delivers value for your audience that they are going to use on Monday morning when they return to the office. Then let's talk.
We have talked about resiliency on this show before. It's been a long, long while. But when I heard Tom, when he reached out to me and asked to share his thoughts on my show, I went out and looked at some stuff and looked at some past interviews he had done. And oh my goodness, y'all, I was like, Tom has to be on my show because of the way he talks about resiliency, his background, his stories, his ability to understand it from not from just a corporate standpoint, the way we talk about it, but from a life standpoint, from a human standpoint of the things that we go through in life. It was so real. And I'm so grateful that Tom was on the show today, and you're going to get to hear all of that stuff. And it was so good talking to him. So Tom LeNoble has led in boardrooms and fought for his life in hospital rooms, surviving multiple life-threatening illnesses, from blazing trails at Facebook. He was one of the first employees there. Walmart, Palm for the HP, and MCI at Verizon, to now guiding global change makers as CEO of the Academy for Coaching Excellence and a leadership coach at Santa Clara University's Miller Center for Global Impact. Tom helps others navigate adversity with courage and clarity. And he's going to do that for you right now. Here we go. Tom, I am so excited to talk to you today. And I think my audience is really excited to listen to you today. So let's do it.
Skot, it's great to be with you. I've really been looking forward to it.
Very cool. I want to start off with a little story. I'm trying to do this more now on my show. But I want to tie people into this story of you and what's going on and how we can set this whole topic up for resilience.
I've had to deal with resilience a lot in my life before I even knew what resilience was. If you read the book, you'll find I grew up in the shack. We actually called it the shack, and no hot water and no refrigerator, and life certainly changed. But I remember waking up one day around 5 and realizing in my little 5-year-old brain, this is not what this is supposed to look like, after I went to school at an early age. But in my adult life, I'll share with you, when a doctor tells you for the third time that you have 6 months to live and you chuckle. Now, let me tell you a secret. If you want to get some doctors upset or concerned, is when they tell you you've got 6 months to live and you give them a laugh. But I already knew something different because I've had 2 life-threatening illnesses. The first one I was told was terminal. And I've lived with metastatic cancer the last 13 years, soon to be 14. And as you can see, I'm still here. And that has required a lot of not only risk, but resilience and reinvention, because I've taken a lot of risks, done a lot of things when I've been told there were no options, there was nothing to do, or been instructed to do something that I didn't feel was right for me, and resilience to get through that in a variety of ways, and then looking at how one reinvents themselves. For me, resilience isn't just about getting up after we fall down. It's how do we grow from it? What do we do with that experience?
That's a really good point. I mean, we talk about bouncing back all the time and being resilient from coming back and coming back and coming back. I had a gentleman on my show one time who's talking about the fact that, we're standing in a boxing ring and we get knocked down and then we get back up and we get knocked down, we get back up, and we get knocked down. And people, we celebrate that as resilience sometimes. But the idea is, he was like, stop getting up, like, for a second. Like, why did you get knocked down in the first place? And let's figure that out so that we don't keep getting knocked down for that same thing over and over again, and learn from the experience and grow from
Absolutely.
it. So I thought it was interesting the way
Absolutely. I find in my practice with so many people, it amazes me sometimes, but I think it's just how we're wired sometimes, is how many people live in the past. It's as if there's going to be a do-over, or like where our phones, where we watch a video and there's that little circle that says 10, that you can go back 10 seconds. That's not life. So get here in the present, learn what you can. But I love this boxing analogy, even though I'm not a big boxing fan, but I'd like to think that the greats not only got back up, but when the match was over, they strategized with themselves and their trainers on what happened, looking at it, understanding it, of what they could learn and grow from it, so they don't get knocked down so many times.
Exactly. I mean, we talk about resilience as either something, I think some people talk about it as either something you have or you don't. But from your lived experience, what do you think actually builds resilience? And then what do you think quietly destroys it?
Yeah, I love this question, because I look at resilience as a muscle. Just like you exercise your bicep or tricep to show your guns, if you exercise the resilience muscle, it serves you better and better, faster and stronger, because you build on it and you learn on it, and it's more available to you. So I think that's how I view resilience, is how we use it to our advantage and build it up, so that when things come along in life. And the reason I say this is, often I find that people forget the evidence. And what I mean by that is, what we're presented with, and especially if it's really difficult, we lose someone, there's a breakup, we lose our pet, we lose our job, whatever it is, whatever we're challenged with, it's like it's a new event that we have to overcome. And we forget the evidence we have of the things we've already done in our life that got us to where we are. And sometimes just taking a moment and allowing yourself to, I like to call it, puff up a little bit on what you've accomplished before and what you've already gotten through, is a great springboard into whatever you're facing today.
So what do you think people are focusing on too much of instead of those things?
Yeah, I think they end up focusing too much on the fear of the unknown, of how the outcome might be, what it might look like to others, that I'm not strong enough. Somebody told me I couldn't do it. Somebody told me I shouldn't do it. Or sometimes we give our power to others. My oncologist calls me a clinical trial of one, which is certainly not the definition, but it cracks me up, because they tell me things all the time that I should do. And I sort of take it in and I make a decision on what's going to happen. So I think that's part of this, is how do we, in these instances where we're required to step up and be resilient, how are we fully present and looking at it with clear eyes and being in control of our destiny, certainly learning from others, taking in for information, but how do we remain in charge and not give it away?
And you talk about resiliency being our greatest currency, the thing that we should value the most. How is that taken meaning in your own life?
Well, if you think about it, you can have a job and lose it. You can have a great title and lose it. The stock market can crash. You can have a disaster and, God forbid, lose your home or something worse. But resilience is your greatest currency because it can't be taken away from you. You can only build it and use it and continue to make it stronger. It's not susceptible to those other, we'll just call them currencies of life.
That's interesting. It can't be taken away from you. This is true. This is true. I think that I never really thought about it that way. And as we go through life and things happen to us, it's kind of easy to kind of wallow in it. Do you ever find people that just want to wallow in it, that don't want to bounce back?
Some people love to wallow. I have this strategy because I am guilty of the wallow. I get a bad lab result, or God forbid it's time to do. I've had enough radiation, Skot, that I could be your night light. I've had so much that I glow in the dark. Put me in the corner and I'll illuminate your room at night. But it's this kind of thing where we're doing this and we're not realizing what our power is in it and how we cannot do that. So what I do is I get that, I look at my phone at the time, I say, Tom, 35, 40 minutes, go for it. Scream at God, stomp your feet, cry, whatever you want to do, and then get on with it, because being there isn't going to move you forward. Now, I know everyone can't do this, but let's face it, whatever you're being faced with, there's only one option, however long you want to wallow, is what are you going to do with it? Here's what I call these things in life. And I'll also give you an example of someone that I just love that mirrors what I'm going to say. I call them terrible gifts. What's a terrible gift? Something happens in our life. It will if it hasn't. We lose somebody we love. We lose a relationship. We lose a job. We get sick. We lose a pet. They're terrible. It's a terrible experience. What I have found is whether it's a month, a year, 5 years, some gift comes from it if we're willing to see it, if we're willing to embrace it. Know this woman, she was a star athlete. She went in the hospital for a very simple procedure, got MRSA, lost her leg. There she is with a cane in a wheelchair. Life has changed. What can we do with that? We could wallow in that forever. But here's what she did. She didn't like the canes and the walking sticks she found. She made one in her own oven in her kitchen out of acrylic, fashioned the handle around a wine bottle. Today, that woman has an international company making these gorgeous canes and walking sticks for people so they can be proud of what they're having to use or feel better about having to use that, we'll call it aid to help them move. This is a terrible gift. How we take these terrible things that happen in life and what do we do with them? Because it happened.
What's your terrible gift? Obviously cancer, it's pretty terrible. My mother had Hodgkin's lymphoma during COVID, and that was pretty rough. But I'm interested how you perceive that.
Certainly illness has been a terrible gift for me. My life has turned far more. I am more focused on service to others today. I always was a bit, but that is my mission. Everything I do feeds my philanthropy, and I have things that I support. So to me, the terrible gift of illness is who I became out of illness, how I empower others who are going through illness, and the ability for me to inspire others to see possibilities when there seems to be none. I think that another way is that, I could look at a terrible gift, and I usually don't talk about this, but I was in a marriage that ended, and it was very, very difficult. It was a very hard thing to go through. However, I see today that what I learned from that is we can't always have what we love. Just like a diabetic can't have sugar because they may love it. An alcoholic may not have alcohol because they love it, whatever that might be that use a metaphor. is the same, that there's things in our lives that we can't love. But what happens after that is, look what I've done after that with my life, of using that terrible gift as a springboard in how I serve others.
That's powerful. I think when I think about my own life and the things that I've experienced, and I don't know what this is. I don't know if my terrible gift is the fact that I've never really had, I don't know. I'm going to say this, but anything that terrible happened to me. I got in a car crash when I was 16 and everybody thought I was going to die. I don't necessarily even remember that because I was out, right? Had amnesia, short-term amnesia, and I didn't remember it. So was that terrible? I don't know. Like, for me, it probably wasn't. For everybody else, it probably was. But there's other things that I just feel super spoiled in life and blessed, whatever, if you want to call it that. And I feel like I've been missing, because I have people in my life that have had, death or sickness or extreme job loss or poverty or something like that, or abuse in their life. And I've just not had any of that. And so I'm always anticipating the day, Tom, when I have that happen to me and how I'm going to handle it. I don't know. I honestly don't know. My dad was diagnosed with dementia a year and a half ago, and it's rough. They live 3 doors up from us, so I help out a lot, but that's rough. So I've started to mourn that,
Yes.
and it's rough.
And what has that given you, that you're being of service to your father?
It's given me an appreciation for, I will say this, and I don't know. My first thing is to say it's given me an appreciation for my mom and her ability to care and to be the person she is, and just to celebrate her, from going through cancer and going through COVID at the same time, and still being a top salesperson in her office for her real estate, and now caring for my dad as much as she does. I see the toll it's taken on her. And so it's given me a big perspective. I always kind of knew she was that. But it's really given me a huge perspective.
It could be said that that's your terrible gift, but I will share this with you. I went through this with my father. And as I look back on it, the gift of being there for him and helping him getting dementia and ultimately the equivalent of Alzheimer's, was terrible. And it was not, the end was not the best, although the actual end was magical. It's in my book. And I encourage people to read that. The death of my brother, my mother, and my father, I was present for, somewhat of a death doula to them. But I would share with you that you may not realize that you've gotten that gift, but I'm going to assure you, Skot, there will be one day when you look back on this and you'll remember this conversation, and you will think about that this potentially was a terrible gift. The other thing is, sometimes terrible gifts are given to others. What you just said about your car accident at 16, while you don't remember it, the fact that you just spoke to the fact that people didn't think you would be here, and you are here. Not only are you here, you're contributing in many ways, is a gift to others. So, I talk to people, and when somebody tells me their life is cruising along like this, that reminds me sort of a flat heartbeat. I think life is sort of a series. And for me, what people perceive as downs is, for me, are where we have opportunities to learn and grow. And the ups are where we get to use that and express what we've learned, knowing that life is probably going to give us another opportunity to learn and grow again.
That is how life works, Tom. That is how it works. We talk about, comebacks. We love comeback stories, and this idea of comebacks and what happens and how they overcame adversity. But rarely do we talk about, I think, the cost of recovery, the cost of that comeback. And I want to shift to a leader perspective now. And I want to ask you, what does resilience ask from people that most leaders don't really prepare for?
I have even trademarked Resaleader, which is combining resilience and leadership. And I coach on that. I speak on it. So it's a great question for me. I think in today's world, leaders are challenged to be more than just a manager, more than just someone who gives orders. Today, and in the diverse workforce, we have the most diverse workforce we've ever had. We have Zoomers in the workforce, and we still have baby boomers in the workforce, which is unheard of, this span of 20s to even 70s of people working together. And the challenges that bring, and people are demanding more of people to be more of coaches, more of how do they get things done through others. And when things happen that that don't appear to be really good or be challenging, or things are happening, how do we use that to inspire people to do better and to do greater? So to me, resilience for leadership is how do we take the things again that we've learned? How do we use them? How have we grown from them? How do we share them and help people through their experiences by the resilience we've expressed, in either motivating them individually, motivating them as teams, motivating them as groups, and being part of something, being a partner in that management and leadership, versus what used to be, certainly in my generation earlier when I was in, where there was somebody at the top telling you what to do versus working as a group. When I was at Facebook in the early days, I interviewed with Mark Zuckerberg when he was 19, and I went to work at Facebook in their early days when they were still in colleges. I was in the first 75 employees. And when I went there, everyone there was in their 20s. They all deferred law school, business school, medical school, because Facebook was in colleges. It was their dream job. And I was old enough to be everyone's father. And I could have gone into that environment with my corporate background and been very, very much a person that it was more directive of do this, do that. What I quickly learned was more about this generation, which I've had a good fortune of working with many generations, including the Zoomers today. But what I learned especially was, even though labeled as lazy and bunch of tattoos, don't dress well, only wear sandals, that wasn't my experience. In fact, what I learned quickly was the group I worked with was brilliant, and that they, as a group, as a generation rather, like to work in groups. They like to solve problems. So I learned quickly that by giving them the problem and asking them to come back with me with the resolution, not only did I fully engage them in it, not only were they part of it, but I was open myself to learning something from it. That's what a resilient leader is today, being willing to learn from others, being willing to be wrong, being willing to admit their mistakes, as well as being the person that's guiding, leading, and mentoring and inspiring.
So the first thing I would say is I look at that as humility. How do you think those play off of each other?
Well, I think, humility to me is, for me anyway, is more about not thinking you've got all the answers, or that you can't have something to learn. I think that for me with resilience, it's how you're using what you've either been through and experienced from that vein to use it. So they could be very tied to each other, certainly. But I think there's a nuance there that if we got a dictionary out, we could probably find it more easily. But I think there's room for both, because let's face it, especially today, we could all have a little bit more humility and realize that we don't have all the answers, and that other people might know a little better, and that people are going through a lot today in this crazy world we're living in.
Especially when we start talking about those generational differences. And the ability to learn from each other. I speak on this quite a bit too, and just having generational empathy and just really trying to build bridges and understanding between what we can all give each other, because there's gifts on both sides.
Absolutely. You know, I used to even give a keynote back because when I was at Facebook with the I called them the kids at the time. I was called the adult in the room. It was kind of funny. But what I realized is each generation gets these labels. They're lazy. They're not applying themselves. They need to find direction, and then they get attached to whether they've got what they're wearing or how they're thinking. To me, when I look at it, what a new generation is doing is bring societal shifts into place of what they're thinking about and what's happening, and embracing them. Our job isn't to say you should apply yourself, you should be doing better. It's listening and mentoring and give them space to grow. I know I work with Zoomers a lot, and I just love it because they are doing things that we've talked about for years. We like to label it work-life balance. They're demanding it. We like to hide our mental health and just hope we had a benefit for it. They're bringing it into focus. We used to talk about how remote work was cherished and stuff. Now it's really more of a thought of who cares if the work gets done. And that time off, how important it is, versus what I used to do was make a long weekend out of a business trip and call it a vacation, which is not a real vacation. So what I have learned and what I see is that each generation gets these same labels. Some of them are even more similar. And what we could do as opposed to that is be open to the fact that there's something here to learn. I read an article the other day, and there's this big study being done about how Zoomers aren't talking. They literally aren't talking. They're online all the time. And as a result of COVID, they were not able to be out in public with each other as more communicative during that time, and what that was going to impact that was going to have. And so I was asked to comment on it. My comment was, start talking. So start talking to them, start talking, engage in conversation, model what that looks like instead of just calling at it as a problem. What are the benefits to having those conversations? I personally think we sorely need, again, more in person. This kind of where we're in boxes has brought many benefits to us. We're able to talk, look at you and I, we're having a conversation today we probably would have never met. And from around the world, we're able in the coaching academy to coach people and have students from around the world because we do it online now instead of face to face. I think it's a time not to get rid of that, to enjoy all of that and to know what the benefits have been and even expand them. But there's room for us remembering that there's something really valuable about us being present with one another that this doesn't take the place of. And I think that study is a perfect example of get with some Zoomers and start talking and open up the door. And maybe while you're doing it, do a little listening too.
Oh, that would be helpful. If we could, just practice listening a little bit more, that would be really helpful. I totally agree. Totally agree. We like to talk a lot. We like to be heard, but it goes the other way as well. So really good thoughts there. What about, let me ask you about this. So we're talking about when a quote unquote crisis hits, resiliency after the fact. But what is something that you would like, just a leadership behavior that you would want people to change before a crisis hits?
I think first of all is to realize life is going to bring you a crisis. So that's part of life, is you're going to have a crisis or two. If you're not, I'm wondering what you're doing and how you're living. So, or whether you're even telling the truth. I think once again, I spoke to it as like this living in the past, be prepared to not go back to a normal structure of behavior of not remembering the evidence of what you've been through before. Also remembering that these crises happens, things pass. Some of the things that we label as the most disastrous crises in our life, we even set expectations for them, never come to pass, that we worry about and that we think about. I have this thing in my practice that sort of mirrors this a bit called the haystack method. And I believe people have their own answers. So sort of like the needle in the haystack, when people are going through a crisis or a challenge, they're trying to find that answer. I think they know it. My job in that situation is to hold the space to clear the hay out of the way so they can find the needle to find that answer. So to remember that you're in a crisis when it's coming, or when you think it might be coming, first of all, don't fear it. Don't start before it gets here. That's a waste of your energy and time. But when it arrives, remember the evidence of what you've done before. Remember that you do know your answers, and the less you can engage in the fear and the panic and the, oh my God of it, the faster you're going to be able to think of how to do with it. And then finally, I would say to remember to breathe. When these things happen to us, we don't realize it, but our breathing becomes very shallow, or we even stop breathing. And there's a really funny thing about these brains of ours. They like oxygen to work. And sometimes just a simple, not a gasp, just a simple breath or two can shift the perspective of what a crisis looks like.
Isn't that interesting? That if we just take a moment, because we're so we're in such a reactive state all the time, thanks to email and our phones dinging at us. And like, we are programmed to just react to whatever happens in our lives. And we are less and less, I think, responding to things. We are always reacting to things. And I hear this from the leaders I work with, that that's what's leading to the stress and the burnout and and AI, I don't think is making it that much easier. I think it's just making it faster to react to things, more convenient maybe to react to things. But, you can ask people. So since the, integration of AI in your life, have you become less busy all of a sudden?
No. In fact, on my podcast, I interview founders and CEOs in tech and executive directors of nonprofits, but probably 85% of these CEOs and founders are working in AI. And it has been fascinating to me, from the medical field to psychology to something that seems so simple. But if you've ever called for a permit to work on your house, and the myriad of things you go through, where this company has taken that and turned it into like literally a click and you've got it done, is fascinating to me. There's so many applications I've learned about it. And then, I think there's this whole idea of AI taking jobs, which I think there's some truth to it. But I talk to people that are talking to me about saying, we're going to have a shortage of people to fill positions. I think I look back in my life, I was there. I'm dating myself now. I was there for the first fax. And we all stood back and looked at that fax machine that went from DC and arrived, I think it was Atlanta, and thought it was magic. I was there when we took people's paper away from them and put computers on their desks, and everybody thought all of their jobs were going to end. And then we remember email came along, and we thought, oh my God, this is going to make us so efficient, we're all going to lose our job. And now we just would love to get rid of that inbox. And then the internet came along, and there was this whole idea that we were going to all lose everything because the internet was going to take the place of everyone. And all it did was create new opportunities, and look at what's happened with that. And now comes along AI. I think these technologies build on one another and grow. And I happen to believe that those of us that don't embrace AI will be left behind in the future. So my idea of AI is, versus avoiding it, fearing it, is to embrace it at some level. And I will say this, it's made me more efficient. So where I use it is, if I want to do research, I can find something faster. If I want to edit something, I can use it for that. It has not taken the place of my creativity. It doesn't, I believe, take the place of human touch. It doesn't take the place of leadership, at least yet. So I think there's so many things about that. And so I think, we're in that space of the unknown about what's going to happen. What I believe, and we'll see what happens, I've had these things that I've seen before. Like I read an article yesterday that Google has now made a change in their plan, and they're hiring people with high school diplomas. when they recruited me many years ago twice. They were only recruiting people with PhDs, which I don't have. And I made a prediction then one day this company will be recruiting people without degrees. I love when things like that happen. I think if you watch technology, these new things come. Let's just take software. And what happens is eventually there's the main players, all the people get gobbled up or they fall by the wayside. And we're going to see some of that happen in the future with AI.
This is I'm going to transition. Watch this transition. You ready, Tom? So this is a lot of your business suit world. You've brought in so much expertise and so much knowledge from everything you've gained from your experience and all the things in life. We've talked about your hospital gown world, right? But talk to me about the high heel world. I'm going off your title, your book title here, right? Business suits, hospital gowns, and high heels. I want to know where the title came from and how you arrived there. I mean, I love the cover. I'm a designer at heart. I started my career in graphic design and brand strategy. And, I love your title and your
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to answer the question this way. All three of those characters are on the book cover are me. Those are all three real pictures. And here's what my purpose of this book, My Life in Business Suits, Hospital Gowns, and High Heels, is all about. Who we are today is the sum parts of everything we've been. And there are parts typically usually in our lives that may seem outrageous, that we may even have some shame for, that we may want to keep private, that we just think somebody may not understand. But indeed, you would not be who you are today without all of those parts. So when you read the book, you'll learn about the high heels and you'll find out how the high heels influenced who I am today. I'm a very, very private man and just spilled all my secrets. And I have to tell you, it's one of the most liberating things I've ever done.
Wow. Okay. Why do you think you kept everything? So I'm inquiring now. I'm not trying to turn this into a coaching session, but it's more informative for me. What kept you so quiet about those things before, and what kind of caused you to say, you know what, I'm laying it all in this book like now? What was the difference?
I have grown into seeing the benefit of all those parts of my life and how they were a trajectory of molding me into who I am and how I express myself today, which really is about service to others. But let's be real. If people knew I had 2 life-threatening illnesses as they were hiring me in some of these roles that I worked in, they wouldn't have hired me. If they had known anything about high heels, you can guarantee they wouldn't have hired me. So I think while I'm saying what I just said about this book, there are times in our lives that things we may have done that it might be smart not to broadcast them. At the same time, in my life today, I am very engaged. I'm doing more than I ever thought possible at my age. I like to say I retired being retired to be inspired. And part of that is sharing with others that no matter what's happened in your life, who you are today, all of that was part of you getting here. What you learned, what you experienced, perhaps resilience, got you here today and where you are and where you can reinvent yourself to keep going.
What do you hope the reader gets out of your book?
I hope that they see that no matter the challenge in life, no matter what seems impossible, there's something that can happen next, and that you can survive it, you can keep going, and that you can use risk and resilience to reinvent yourself no matter what gets thrown your way.
Well said. It's almost like you practiced saying that, Tom. That was brilliant. The way you said it was really well said. I'm going to do a couple little lightning round questions for you real quick. Okay. Sometimes my lightning round turns into like not a lightning round because I get so curious, but sometimes it's fine. Sometimes I let it be a lightning round. Okay. Let's talk. So the lie about strength. So you're going to finish this sentence, okay, Tom? The lie about strength I believed for so long was what?
The lie about strength that I believed so long was that other people were stronger than me.
Adversity, here's one. Adversity doesn't change people, it blank.
Adversity doesn't change people. It is how you grow.
Leadership becomes dangerous when blank.
Leadership becomes dangerous when you're willing only to be a leader and not a learner.
What really saved me wasn't grit per se, it was blank.
What really saved me wasn't grit, but it was the fact that I believed I could.
Do you think, in your opinion, working with as many people as you've worked with and encountered as many people as you have in your life, that people lack that belief?
I think we often forget the power we have in our own minds and our ability to make the right decisions for ourselves and giving away those decisions to others.
What's the danger there?
You don't listen to your own, we'll call it gut intuition, and what you know is best for you.
Amen. Yeah, I think we have learned to take advice from way too many people. I understand we need to process. I understand we need to bounce ideas and gather insights and maybe things we haven't thought of. I think people are an amazing resource, the trusted advisors that we have in our lives. I think it's when we lend that out to too many untrusted advisors that it becomes cloudy. We don't learn to embrace the advisor that we are to ourselves, and yes. We kind of forget that.
It happens so frequently with illness and in the medical world, where especially older generations, maybe even younger, perceive doctors as having all the answers and that we don't have a role in it. You know, I was told one time, your cancer came back, it's in 5 locations, we can't do anything for you. If I had bought into that and believed that a good 12 years ago, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. Instead, I chuckled and got to work doing some research and finding what options were. What I've learned from illness is serious illness, life-threatening illness, is if you can keep yourself alive, something else is coming. And I don't want to belittle illness for a moment. It is difficult. There have been some moments in my life where I had to tie a knot in the string to hold on. But boy, am I glad I knew how and had the wherewithal to tie that knot.
Tom, I'm sure you've been a blessing in a lot of people's lives. I don't know for sure because I just met you, but you know, I can imagine just from your experience, I can hear your heart and your sincerity and your desire for other people and to being for others. And again, I don't know if you've always been that way, but I think there's always been an element of that in you. I could just tell from just talking to you, hearing your energy through the screen is something I don't take for granted. And I appreciate you being on the show, man.
Skot. It's been great being with you today.
How can people, if they want to talk to you more, find out more about the book, speaking opportunities, etc.? What do they do?
You can go to my website, www.tomlenoble.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm doing a series right now called Morning Ground. It's about a minute every morning of me in a little video. I encourage people to check it out. And of course, you could get the book and you'll learn lots. You know, I hear all the time, I can't put this book down. I laughed, I cried, I did both at once. And it's been really exciting. And then I'm at resilience@tomlenoble.com. It's easy to reach out to me.
There you go. Tom, keep blessing the people in your life, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great being with you, Skot.
Too many of us give over our power. We give over our power to others and their thoughts and their judgments and their, I guess, suggestions about things. And we embody a lot of that power ourselves, and we should not be giving it away. there are times when we need to get advisement. There are times when we need to have suggestions and we can bounce ideas. I get that. But I believe so much in what Tom was talking about is that the power is within us. For most of it, we have lived with ourselves our whole lives. I know, y'all, it is like your mind is blown right now because you just realized it. But when you realize that, you have so much to give yourself that don't underestimate that power. This idea of a terrible gift, I'm going to try this. Next time something happens, I am going to reframe it as a terrible gift. What am I getting from this? What am I able to learn? And this whole thing, and I love this too. If you could, give yourself permission to be angry, to be frustrated, to be sad, to be depressed, to be whatever that thing is at the moment that you need to feel. Now, depression is a bigger deal. I get that. But if there's some moment of sadness in your life, decide when you're going to be done. I think that is a real empowering moment to say, hey, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes. I've heard this before, right? 5-minute rule. I'm going to be pissed off for 5 minutes. And I'm going to decide to move on. And that's okay. 30 minutes. Tom was talking about, 35 minutes. He gives himself 35 minutes and then he moves on. And, just give yourself that time frame. I think it helps us flip something in our mindset about when we want to start moving forward with what we need to move forward with. And that's a really, really important moment in our life and a lesson that we can all learn. This resilience muscle, it can't be taken away. It can't be. And I really loved that he reframed it for me in that light. Everybody, go out, grab Tom's book. He is a #1 best-selling author for a reason. So thanks for Tom for being on the show, and thanks y'all for showing up.
If you want to find out more information about me or check out the show notes where there's going to be more information and links to the things referenced in this episode, visit skotwaldron.com. And lastly, I'm asking for a little bit of love, just a little bit. So please take a moment, follow, rate the show. The algorithms like that. It helps me get the word out. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And until next time, stay unlocked.